and it hits the lip, and I raise my arms up as a last ditch effort. I fall flat on my face, and like Slime Time Live, 22 quarts of Demi over the top of my head and down my back, all over everything in the walk-in. Mark Summers would have been proud. Welcome to Whipped Cream Salmon. I'm your host, Ronnie Sanchez, joined here with my co-host, Brian Bastanza. Brian, super excited to get started with our pilot episode. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Ronnie. Thanks for the introduction. Super happy to be here. This might be a little different of an episode than we wind up doing, but hopefully today, we can discuss a lot of what we're hoping to do with this pod, what we're personally trying to get out of it, what we're trying to provide to the audience, and hopefully tell a few stories along the way. Hopefully have some laughs. A theme that has kept coming up as we've been discussing starting this pod is there should be some therapeutic pieces of this. I think mixed in with a lot of laughs. So
yeah, man, for sure. And we explored like a lot of different avenues before settling on a podcast. So for the audience, we started out. We met as line cooks in Lake Tahoe. We were cooking at a ski resort up there, and it was quite a few years ago now. And we got away from the restaurant industry, like so many other people did, like after COVID. And now we're like settling into civilian life, if you will. And
sure.
So, we're kind of exploring different avenues. Like the grass isn't always greener. Like there's a lot of things that are great about not working in a restaurant anymore. But I think for both of us, like our love language still is and always has been food. And, when we get together now, that's what our hangouts are like centered around, eating food,
Certainly.
cooking. Last time we were together, we smoked a brisket together and made some killer smoked poblano mac and cheese. That was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I can kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about as like a topic for today is just like how being in the restaurant industry as a professional, and what that felt like, and then adjusting to like you said, civilian life. Like I refer to it as like the default world a lot of times, and the pros and cons of all of that. I mean, there are certainly like financially, I feel like I'm in a better place. I think I have more freedom, for example, as far as like I can take days off and no one really bothers me about taking like that is
It's huge.
a massive plus that I was really wishing I had when I was in it. So like you said, like the grass is greener on the other side. Like I really struggled with that at times when I wanted to go do things and I wasn't able to do them because I was like tied at the hip to
and
restaurant
the
world,
last restaurant that I worked at, it wasn't one that we worked at together, but the last one I worked at, it was a mom and pop owned restaurant. It was dinner only. It was like definitely upscale, more like fine dining restaurant. But being that it was a mom and pop owned restaurant and a successful one at that, but even then we didn't have benefits, and we were fortunate enough that like they would pay for our, we did have like paid vacation, but it was like an unspoken thing. You went on vacation and you were just kind of hoping that when you got back that you had hours on your next check, and it was like, and even then, like you felt really guilty being away, even though like there was this unspoken thing, like you didn't know if they were actually going to provide anything for you,
For sure. You feel like this sense of loyalty. I think probably our parents' generation have a different sense of what loyalty is. I mean, my father was like not in the food industry, was in a very much a corporate job, but was there for a very long time. I think like, when he retired, I think he had held 3 or 4 jobs in his career, which is very different than the food industry. Um, it's very different than I think our generation kind of
Hmm.
looks at career. I think the smartest of us will hop around and get not only gain experience, but also like every time you hop around to a new place, there's probably a financial bump that goes along with it. Um, and I don't know, it's shifting, and it's cool to like recognize that and see. As far as the food industry goes, and like that I the things that I don't miss, we kind of spoke a little bit to that. I think definitely don't miss the weird weekend hours. I definitely like don't miss the holiday life. Just being in the restaurant the whole time. I like being able to like see friends
Yeah,
and
not
family
seeing your family for Christmas for like a solid decade.
for sure. It honestly has like skewed my perception of what like a holiday is, and at times I feel out of place. Like even during the holidays now, I'm like, I don't know, because when I think about it now, I like really wore that as a badge of honor that I was in the restaurant during Christmas and during New Year's, and I like was very proud of that. And I was like, well, this is kind of my family in a lot of ways. I do have a healthy relationship with my parents and my sister, but also like I don't think that I have. I don't know. It's funny. Like I don't know that I have the same connection with my like immediate family that I do with people who I've stood next to.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely something to that, and yeah, I think that when I moved to Tahoe, um, and I was working at the ski resort, working in the restaurants, yeah, it was like a good 8 or 9 years before like I did go back home for Christmas.
Sure,
It just wasn't a thing,
sure.
and people outside of the restaurant industry, they really don't understand that. And my mom would be like, "Oh, maybe for Christmas this year you can come. Maybe we can go do this for Christmas." I'm like, no, I fucking can't. Like, it's not even an option. Like,
Right.
there's no such thing as like I couldn't request those days off. Like, it wouldn't happen. You know,
Those are not things. Yeah. What are some of the things that you miss most about it?
definitely the camaraderie. Um, being part of a team and just like the kitchen hijinks. Just like the bullshitting with the guy standing next to you. And the job I have now, I'm by myself all day long, which on one hand you get a lot of freedom because I don't have anybody to answer to. I'm not responsible for, I don't know, just the normal things that happen throughout a kitchen day. And when I'm done with my job, I'm done. I go home.
Um, Sorry, I just was going to say, just for the audience, if you want to just like go into what you are doing nowadays, just quickly.
Oh yeah, so well, I guess a little even before that. So after COVID or during COVID, I was living in Reno, Nevada. Brian was you were in North Lake Tahoe, right? Yeah, at Squaw.
Yeah, I was in South Lake, and I think when you moved to Reno, I was in South Lake and kind of had been transitioning back up to North Lake. There was a period where
Okay,
I was commuting from South Lake to North Lake for work. Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, so yeah, COVID happened. I was working in Reno, Nevada at a restaurant, and I was working there with my girlfriend, and we decided, well, as the restaurant started opening back up and we were starting to go back to work, and we were just like all the restrictions and everything, and it was just like it was a tough time for everybody in the restaurant industry, and so we decided to make a change and kind of, for lack of a better word, threw a dart at the board and landed on Raleigh, North Carolina, and we moved out here and decided we were going to get away from restaurants, and we wrote out a list of things that we wanted in our lives, which was like more sunrises and sunsets were on the list. Being able to eat dinner at home, um, and so I took a job at Pepsi, and it's a whatever job. It's a transitional job, but the nice thing about it is it's Monday through Friday. I don't have to work nights. I don't work weekends. I do have benefits, and it's not a job I plan on being at for a long time. But for the meantime, that's where we're at. And what about you, Ryan?
Um, yeah, so I mean, somewhat similar of a situation. I mean, I was, like I said, I was in South Lake. I moved back up to North Lake. I took a sous chef job at a restaurant, Plum Checks, that Ronnie and I both worked at together for years, probably 3 years we worked together there. And we also worked together
Yeah,
before that.
I was there for 3 years together, and then you left, and I was there for like 5.5 years total, and then you eventually came back to be the sous there.
Yeah, I think we kind of like saw each other going out. You were going out the door, and I was coming in a little bit.
Yeah,
We will definitely get into what that experience was like, but I was really proud to take that job, and I was really excited. I had been kitchen managing before that, but it was not at a. I was really excited to like play with food and like have some artistic influence on the food and like just try out new recipes, which is something that I didn't really have at the restaurant before that. And then COVID kind of happens. I thought we were doing some pretty cool stuff. It was challenge. It was very challenging at times. Like we were, I feel like the Tahoe restaurant industry is kind of a microcosm for the restaurant industry at a whole. But like, there's a lot of people just. It was much harder to find people to
hmm
stand on the line as we were getting closer to COVID, and then once COVID hit, really people started to explore other options. At first, I had like 3 months off from the restaurant. I wind up starting to learn how to program, and I spent another 9 months at the restaurant while I continued to learn how to code, and eventually got a coding job. And that coding job was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we packed up our bags. My girlfriend and I packed up our bags. We moved to Charlotte, and all of a sudden, I am working in this corporate environment, which there are a lot of good things to say about, and there's a lot of things that I'm just not so sure about.
Well, and
Maybe.
the great thing about you moving out here, which it was actually our old executive chef had informed me that you were moving out here. I was like, no fucking way. And so now we're what is it, like 2.5 hours apart?
Yeah, about 2 hours.
You know, and so we kind of rekindled this friendship, and um, you know, it's like you've been through these experiences with somebody, and um, you equate it to like going to battle, like the people next to you, like civilian life, they'll never understand like what you experience, and like obviously cooking isn't the same as going to war, but like there is like a you know it, there are similarities there, like those late nights and weekends and holidays, and you're like busting your ass on the line, and you know you grow these bonds with the people. So like it's great having you out here that we can reflect on these experiences and share these experiences. And it's kind of like how we ended up podcasting, right? Because we were exploring different avenues. Like when we get together, we cook food, and so we were like, well, how can we go about doing this, kind of like dip our toes back into the culinary world a little bit, without just going and getting
Sure.
a restaurant job. Um, so we talked about a number of different things, right? We talked about doing some kind of like a pop up, or like a food cart, like at the farmers market. Um, but when we kind of looked into that, it's kind of like a high barrier to entry for us to be doing it just as like a fun hobby, like a couple days, you know, I don't even know like how many days, like once a month or twice a month. It's a good 5 hours of driving each way. So like we can't
Sure.
really afford to
100%, man. I
lose
mean,
much on it, you know?
100%.
Like we don't have like a lot of overhead to be worried. And then what else we got?
Well, I was just going to say, like, just the little that we looked into doing a pop-up or a tent at a farmer's market or whatever it is, it really was like, you're basically doing 80% of what it would take to kind of open a restaurant.
Right.
Now, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but all the licensing and food safety, and I mean, you don't really need the equipment that you need. You can certainly do it, but there's a lot that can go into in the States popping up a little restaurant and doing it by the books.
Right.
I'm sure I see people around Charlotte doing it not by the books. Let me be clear about that. I'm not sure everyone who has licenses, but I know all of them don't. So there are other.
I like some fucking guerrilla street meat marketing. That's what I'm about.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head that like I really want to like dip your toes back in, and you said like not going out to just grab a job. Like not that hasn't crossed my mind as well.
Same.
To go take a couple shifts. The problem with that is you end up in the same situation where if I were to step into a restaurant, even for 2 nights a week, almost especially maybe like Friday, Saturday night, well, you can't really like do that and take off that Saturday ever, right? Like if you only work 2 days a week, you have to be there every Saturday, 100%. So I don't know. It's really good to have. I think we found something that is going to hopefully satisfy that hunger a little bit. We'll continue to see each other and cook food together, and that'll be awesome. We can explore all sorts of fun stuff in this medium, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, that's kind of how we ended up podcasting. We also talked about a YouTube channel, which I don't know, maybe at some point we can do some kind of YouTube videos, cook something. Maybe it'll just be like a live stream, but
Sure.
Again, we'd have to be in person together, and logistically, at least right now, that makes it a little tough.
Yeah, I mean, we're close because we're 2.5 hours away, but that makes it tough to do it once a week, like or more. I mean, that makes it really tough. And I think to do that medium, you probably have to definitely nail out at least a video a week to do it in a way that you're really like sustaining growth amongst an audience. And I think this, like if I think we can do this comfortably once a week, and just see where it goes, and maybe it grows from there. I don't have a ton of really like expansive goals for what we're going to accomplish. I mean, I hope that we find our voice and we have a lot of fun along the way, and we remember some stuff that maybe I
think that sums it up pretty well. I like that.
And just to talk a little bit about, say you miss like the camaraderie of being in the restaurant and the people that are there. It's something that I certainly struggle with now. Is you can't be as loosey goosey in corporate America as you can be in the kitchen.
No, you can't.
That doesn't mean like it was right to do when we were in the kitchen, but also like you find out really quick who you're standing next to, and if you're vibing with them. And I don't know. I guess like I've always wore like my feelings on my sleeve in a lot of ways, and having to suppress that a little bit definitely. It's definitely something I have to figure out how to get over a lot of times. I definitely am still rough around the edges. I mean, you mentioned like going to war, like literally going to war. We're not doing that. We never did that. We also carried an edginess about us that I imagine is a little different when you're right. I think we were
for sure.
We worked with some questionable characters along the way, and that's some of the magic of it. Is like this person is doing this thing right now. And um I was talking to my friend Alexa the other day, and she's like, if you need stories, like I got 10 from this week. So it's not stopping. Certainly not. And the more the more it moves to be like less qualified people in these positions, I think it keeps on moving in that direction, the crazier stories that you wind up hearing, and I think like some of the funniest moments are just like, well, that person's not qualified to do that at all. So, but they're gonna do it.
Right. I love the memes where it's like, compliments to the chef, and then it's like the chef is like, like some 15-year-old stone kid in the back of a pizza shop. Well, this ties in perfectly to my first segment, I guess. I'm calling it Pirate's Life. And it's a term that we've brought up a lot. And I think it probably, Anthony Bourdain coined the term, like working as a pirate crew or on the pirate ship. Um, and especially at the restaurant that we worked at, we'll call it PJ's. At PJ's, like, it's in Lake Tahoe. It's at the base of it, a ski resort, like a big mountain ski resort, and the vibe there, like people party. Um, the cooks are no exception. It's a small community, like so everybody that lives in the area, they're there for one thing and one thing only, and that's to get after it on the mountain in the wintertime. In the summertime, they're there to like, you know, party and like go to the lake and float the lazy river and get ham. But at the same time, we worked in a restaurant where we did put out good quality food, and we were held to like a high standard. And I just kind of want to talk about like how we embraced that pirate ship. And what was the phrase that you used? Like it was like a pirate ship or like a booze cruise on
Pirate ship on a booze cruise to the island of misfit toys.
exactly. And I think that sums up that restaurant pretty damn well. A
For sure.
pirate ship on a booze cruise to the land of misfit toys, and yeah, we were definitely a pirate crew. I mean that like you read about like that kitchen was pretty rowdy.
Sure, sure. For sure. It's funny. I do want to be somewhat clear about this, that like, I mean, there's some of these places that some people would consider high end.
Mm.
I do want to be kind of clear that like none of these places are Michelin star restaurants, right?
No.
They're definitely, and many of them, most of them for me, with the exception of one in New York, like most of them are within this context of, yeah, this is high end food for Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
And I think the added spice that you get from the Lake Tahoe vibe is not only are you dealing with kitchen crews who are already a little off the rocker, they're a little bit of adrenaline junkies in their own right, but then you're also adding this like, oh, the line cook actually like just sent this 80-foot cliff like 3 hours ago because he's a fucking nutcase. And the combination of just general restaurant like bullshit, but with on top of like adrenaline junkie partier ski town vibes, it's pretty special. And
Mm-hmm.
I really like identify with it in a lot of ways. Not only do I think we have some fun stories to tell along those lines, but I like I'm proud of that
For sure.
part of me.
Yeah. And it was kind of like like you partied hard, and like it was definitely like you wore it with a badge of honor. And like this is a restaurant where there was a lot of drinking at work, there was a lot of drug use at work, there and after and before, and all-nighters and a lot of hungover line cooks, and there was a lot of chaos, and like somehow we always got it done. And I mean, like, people love that restaurant.
Sure, for sure. I mean, I just to speak to myself, like I have worked no less than 50 shifts with zero sleep. Like at that restaurant.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah, man.
napped under banquet tables probably 20 times during my half hour
Hmm.
break because I had not slept the night before. I mean, I just like to go into my background a little bit. Like I did go to culinary school, and culinary school was like this very like it seems very professional. If you are like an outsider looking in and you're walking around campus, and I went to CIA, like it looks like very high end and everyone knows exactly what they're doing. But in reality, there is still this world where it's like, okay, there's this really professional side of it. And then there's this really rowdy side of it as well. And you do get both of that. So then moving to Tahoe, um, there was less professionalism in a lot of ways, which I mean, I just ate that up, right? I was like,
Hmm.
please, please, please give me more of this. And these are my people in a lot of ways. And yeah, I mean, I think we made some pretty fun food there. We went through a couple chefs, you and I, right? We had a chef that when we started there, he had moved on probably 2 years into to my first stint there, our first stint there.
Yeah.
Um, Got a new chef that moved from sous chef up to head chef, and both of them are excellent, like creative minds, and definitely learned a lot. Also, I mean, I remember walking into that place and being intimidated in a lot of ways.
100%. Yeah, I remember one of the first days. It was I was actually talking to Justice of all people, and I was like, Justice was just like, I don't know, he's probably like late 40s, early 50s, like
Lifer,
just
yeah,
lifer, you know, and just a jaded lifer. And I was like, I'm just trying to stay out of your guys' way. He was like, don't, don't worry about it. But like, definitely looking at that kitchen, and also that first year that we started working there was a lot of talent in that kitchen, and like two of the line cooks were, executive chefs or of their own right, that they just came. There's a lot of people that just come to Tahoe for the ski season just to kind of be a ski bum for the year and like take up a job in the meantime, to get a free ski pass. And that's exactly what those guys were doing. And they came from running their own restaurants.
they're like, I want to
So
ski, and I
yeah.
I get that. I think it's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they're I don't know, and we could speak to that a little bit, just like, and that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say like I think the restaurant industry has changed a lot from my perspective, at least, and it's somewhat anecdotal and people that I've spoke to. But I mean, I never hear a story where a chef or a cook's like, "Oh, we're
No, that
fully
doesn't
staffed," and
exist.
haven't heard that in a very long time. But when we stepped into those roles at that restaurant, it was competitive. Like
It was, and actually, I was like on the chopping block. It was between me and some other cook, and I remember,
not the chopping, but like like maybe not getting hired, not like you were about to
yeah,
get
yeah,
fired.
yeah,
Yeah,
because our executive chef was leaning towards somebody else that at the time had more experience than myself, and he was like, "Well, I'm kind of waiting to hear on this guy, but if he falls through, then the position's yours." But I remember um, walking out of my interview, and then I ran into you, and you had just interviewed prior, and and we just the previous ski season we worked at a different spot
yeah.
together, which you actually had to take the ski lift to the top of the mountain. It's basically a
Yeah,
cafeteria, but but we worked at the top of the mountain in like a little like I don't even know what you call it. So it was like set up like a cafeteria. There's like different stations, you got like this Jewish kid working on the Asian bowl station, and then there's like a pizza
fair
station and
brats and
whatever. Yeah,
really good pheasant soup.
the
Honestly,
pheasant soup was fire. It
kind of
really
hit,
was.
kind of
It
hit.
was smoked pheasant soup. It was definitely the best thing there.
I mean, so that probably speaks like a little bit to where we are, and you have to picture like, I mean, both of us, right? We're like 21, 22 years old,
Yeah.
maybe. Moving out to Tahoe, career was not the top priority for me. It was
No.
let me see something new and snowboard. I mean, that, to be frank, like I think everyone I spoke to about, I was like, oh yeah, I'm moving to Tahoe. I'm going to be a snowboarder. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. And I
Um,
sold it to my parents that I was like, oh, I got hired as a chef up there,
yeah.
which obviously was not the case. Went to work in a cafeteria and get a free ski pass.
That's fine. You never told me that. Hold on. You said that you told your parents that you're a chef
I
at the chef. Like, what did they think of that?
when I told my parents that I was moving to Tahoe. Yeah, I told them that I got a job offer as a sous chef at this restaurant on the mountain.
Restaurant is a strong word.
In the cafeteria.
You got hired as a lunch lady, Ronnie?
Yeah, but I said what I had to say to get there okay.
Sure.
But when we moved up there, if you remember that first year in Tahoe, what was it? I guess it was you were there a year before me, so it was the 2011-2012 season. The 10-11 season was like a huge snow year. And so when we moved up there, that's all that I heard about was how much snow they had gotten the year before, and everyone's houses were buried. And then the 11-12 season, it didn't fucking snow. We moved there December 1st because they were like, oh, we'll be open by December 5th. And then it didn't snow till the end of January. We didn't open till like February 10th or something like that. So me and my roommates, between the five of us living in a house, all we could afford was a bag of rice, peanut butter, and a bottle of soy sauce. And we had peanut butter soy rice every single day.
Broke stuff.
Super broke. That, I mean, like,
super broke.
Dead broke. Walk into Safeway and fill up
ski pass. A ski pass though.
But the ski resort was closed. It wasn't even open. So literally, when we'd walk into the Safeway. They had like the soup, chili and mac and cheese, little like wells. I'd go in there and fill up one of those with mac and cheese, and I turn around and walk straight out because I literally had no fucking money. And thankfully, at some point, they opened, or like they sent out like an actual food drive. I can't remember. I think it was called Project Mana, and it was this fucking. It was a fucking soup kitchen, a food drive that went around and gave groceries to ski bums that had moved up there. There's also a lot of like, we call them J1s, but they were like these kids that came to work at the ski resort on a J1 visa, but they were from all over the world, from Eastern Europe, from South America, from everywhere around the world. And those kids were in the same position that we were in, where they moved to a new country to fucking be a lifty, and there was no jobs because it didn't snow. So thankfully this Project Mana group, they came around and they actually saved our ass. And we like, I remember there's like a news crew there, right? And we're standing in line to get food because we're poor. And these news crews, they're like, can you hold up the fucking loaves of bread you got? We're like posing with like cans of spaghetti.
Hey man, I was just in there listening to my Will Smith CD. I mean, yeah, that's funny. I like, it's been a while since I am a little removed from like being that broke, but like I have a very similar story where Josh and I moved from upstate New York. It was winter. This was, as you said, like the gnarly winter. So we moved out there December 1st, and the mountain was like fully open already. But I think I don't think this is metaphor. Like, I think between the two of us, we had $500.
Yeah, that sounds about right. My rent was $300, and I lived on a lakefront property.
I said like $500, like, and we hadn't even left New York yet, right? we're like, I hope we have enough gas to like get there. And at the time, which it's sad that it's not still there, honestly. But we moved into the hostel at the base of Squaw,
Mm-hmm.
and
Now that was a place
yeah,
all
that
on its own.
was, I mean, one of the gnarlier experiences you'll have. I mean, I'm talking when I first moved in there, like I was in a bunk. There was 20 beds in that room. There were lockers, like school lockers in there. And I mean, just rowdy skiers, right? I mean, everyone is just there to ski. And I mean, some of my best friends in my life I had met at that place and still talk to this day. But what a scene.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of drinking, a lot of puking, working somewhat, but being broke was definitely something that we all shared together. I think like I wasn't I like didn't have money to stay there. I think they had some sort of deal where like they would take money from my first paycheck
Mm-hmm.
and they let me stay there. Like they let me stay in this bunk bed with 20 other people in the room because I didn't even really have enough money to
Isn't that
afford it.
something?
And it's one of my favorite experiences of my life. Isn't that crazy too?
And if I remember correctly, wasn't like every wall of that building was like there was some kind of like art in there, like graffiti art or like painted in some way? Wasn't there like characters and shit on the walls? Or am I making
Yep.
that up?
Yep. It was very, very weird building. I mean, it smells like snow that had melted off skis and has like ended up on the carpet of this place
Mold.
and
It
had
smells like
been,
mold.
yeah, it's mold. It's just mold. Um, yeah, there's some art, a lot of smoking weed. They said that you weren't supposed to smoke in there, but we smoked some weed in that building, like a lot of it. Um, that was awesome. That was great. And then, eventually you kind of scrap your way out of there. I think like probably only like, I think I lived there for 6 months though. Get yourself on your feet a little bit, wind up finding a house with, six other homies, and you move
Which for
in
the
and,
listener, like finding a house in Tahoe, especially nowadays, is it's really hard. Really, really hard.
easier then, but not that easy then either. Yeah.
Yeah, easier then, but given how tough like the housing market is in the country as a whole, like Tahoe is a very small community with like very limited resources, and now all of the homes, even then, like pretty all the homes there are owned by like second homeowners. So when we moved up there into my first house, um, I went for like a walk around the neighborhood, and I was on Donner Lake. I went for a walk around the neighborhood, and every fucking house was empty. The windows were boarded up, nice homes, but everyone was boarded up. There was nobody. And I saw somebody outside and I was like, stopped and talked to him. I was like, what's going on? He's like, oh yeah. It's like nobody actually lives here. These are all
Yeah.
vacation houses. But so they're all vacation homes with like employee, like the people that are working at these restaurants and at these um, ski resorts can't find a place
It's
to live,
crazy.
even though everywhere is empty. So it makes it really tough. Like in the restaurant, like finding people to work, there's a limited supply of people because there's a limited supply of homes.
Sure.
Really, and that's kind of eventually why I left.
Sure. Yeah, and this is pre Airbnb, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about 2011 to 2000. Like, I mean, we were there. I was there for longer than that. We were both there for longer than that, but definitely in the like 2011 to 2014 range when we were especially broke, probably. And I mean, as time moves on, and then like Airbnb starts being the hot thing, and then like people really start getting displaced. And I mean, it's way tougher now than it used to be. As tough as it was back then, you could figure out getting 4 or 5 people into
Yeah.
a house. Now, I keep hearing stories from people who are just like, I couldn't be there anymore. I like literally like, I mean, I don't know if that's what moves you to
Yeah,
Reno
it's
eventually.
exactly what moved me. Well, I was living in a house with way too many people. and it was just a party house, and I was like, you know, almost 30 at that point. I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to get into my own space, and it's just not really a possibility to get a 1 bedroom. There aren't apartments there for one, so getting a 1 bedroom apartment in Tahoe is out of the question, and renting a house by myself wasn't going to happen. So that's how I ended up in Reno, and I feel like a lot of people just kind of end up in Reno for, I don't know, for that same reason, but it's cheaper, so it was only 30 minutes away, so that's how I ended up there.
I mean, I think it's awesome too. I mean, just generally, like, I think about Reno a lot. I'm like, oh, I really like that place. Like, not only is it fun, but I wound up skiing. Like, I think my last season being in Tahoe, I skied Mount Rose. Mount Rose is super accessible from Reno. Um, there is a great like music and art scene in Reno, and I don't know if it's cheaper than Tahoe anymore, to be honest. I mean, I think like we used to say stuff like that. Now,
Yeah, it's gotten a lot more
it's grown
expensive,
quite a bit
which
since
was
those
why we
days a
ended
little
up
bit
leaving
too.
Reno. But no, I mean,
Yeah,
everywhere's expensive now. But we were looking at buying a house, and yeah, Reno is just like, it's like $350,000 for a double wide trailer in the middle of the desert. No, thank you. So
I think we can move on to our next segment, and I think this is going to be a reoccurring segment. Uh, we're going to move on to Idiot Sandwich.
What are you? Idiot.
You stupid idiot!
I'm an idiot sandwich.
You're an idiot!
Of all the idiots, you stand alone.
Ronnie and I are both going to share what we deem to be the idiot of the week. A lot of these are going to be past stories, I think. Some of them I'm going to be the idiot of the week a lot of times. I have some fun stories of people that I've watched do dumb stuff. I think there will be times when we're kind of perusing Reddit, and I mean, hopefully eventually people are sending their
yeah,
own
would
story.
love that. Would love to get user or listener submissions. Would be great.
That would be great. And we'll figure out how to link all that stuff in show notes and all that once we get our feet under us. But do you want to take it away, Ronnie, and share your idiot of the week?
Yeah, I can start it off. Yeah, my idiot sandwich of the week is me. This is this is probably
Let's go. Let's get
7
Ronnie
or 8
around.
years ago. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, closing out the restaurant. This is at PJ's, and it was a busy ass night. It was just me and our sous chef Nick. We're the only people left, and everyone's just like finishing up, like cording everything up. The restaurant is cleaned. We'd already scrubbed everything down, and then all I had to do was take the demi, the 22-quart Cambro of demi that was in the sink cooling, right, and bring it to the next door cooler. So our restaurant, there was like a banquet hall on one side, and then the main kitchen. So I was taking it from the main kitchen across to the banquet hall, and putting it in the walk-in for the night. And that's all I had to do, was just put it on the shelf, and then I could clock out. And I'm walking over there, and I carrying this 22-quart Cambro, and I have a space cleared off. It's about chest height on the rack to place it. And in between me and the rack, there's a pallet on the ground with like some, I don't know, proteins of some sort.
Yeah. I'm picturing it. I know the walk-in well, and I know the racks of nonsense on the floor.
It's a pretty small walk-in, the one over there. And so as I'm reaching over the pallet, and I've got my foot kind of like placed up against the pallet, I'm stretching across it, and my foot's on the pallet, and suddenly the pallet slips forward as I'm holding this 22-quart bucket away from my body, and I slip forward, and my body starts going down, and now my hands are above my head as I'm falling down, and I'm making a last ditch effort to get this big ass 10-gallon whatever bucket of demi on the shelf, and it hits the lip, and I raise my arms up as a last ditch effort. I fall flat on my face, and like Slime Time Live, 22 quarts of demi over the top of my head and down my back, all over everything in the walk-in. Mark Summers would have been proud.
That is amazing. This is the first time I'm hearing of this.
Yeah, it took at least another hour to mop up the walk and everything else. It was awful.
Yeah, and yeah, for the listener, demi is it's beef stock or veal stock reduction, right? As you reduce, any stock, but particularly veal stock, it gets very gelatinous. So this is, I'm not sure
Super
the
thick.
consistency of yours, but sometimes it's as thick as like you cannot like get a spoon
molasses,
through it, right? I don't know if that's what this was. Probably. I remember a lot of demis kind of thick.
It was pretty thick. And also what we're understating is how expensive it is and how long it takes. For that quantity, it probably took a full 2 days between like the stock and then strain it and then run it again and strain it and then reduce all that. It probably took a full 48
Yeah,
hours.
let's go through it. I mean, because you take the bones, right? You roast the bones. Probably takes 45 minutes to roast the bones. You probably have like 5 or 6 or maybe more, 10 sheet pans full of bones, right?
Yeah,
in various ovens
easily. It was a lot.
maybe probably in the one kitchen. There's probably like 6 or 7 racks that are going. You kind of roast those all off. You may or may not have cooled them. They wind up going in to a big stock pot.
I think we typically ran 2
stock pots, right?
I think so. I think there was 2 stock pots, and so you get you make your first stock with that, and you strain it, and then I think the second flush, I think it's called the Remy,
yeah,
and so you strain it, you fill it back up, you fucking run it again, get whatever you can remaining from that, and then you strain that, and you combine the liquids, and then you cook just the broth, the liquid, until it gets thick like syrup basically, and it's super rich. If you've ever been had a steak at a nice steakhouse, you've probably had it. So that dark syrupy meat glaze on
the best. It's the best.
It's delicious.
Yeah, so it probably takes like, just to get the first round of beef stock, that's like an overnight process, probably like a
minimum 24 hours.
Yeah, so you're getting like, you're probably like putting it on like the night before. Maybe you start, let's say you started at like 6 p.m. You let that run overnight. Someone may strain that at some point the next day, probably, or maybe around noon, right? Strain that batch. You filled up the pot again with water. You run that again overnight. And while that's happening, you may or may not be reducing the first batch, but
yeah, I think so.
Eventually, they'll all end up in the same batch together, reducing for, I don't know, 4 hours, very slow. You want to burn it. And then, all you have to do is cool it at that point. Some ice baths and your Cambros, your 22-gallon containers, and into the ice they go. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how expensive that is, but as like how much time it takes, like just the simple amount of like time taking on the burner, it takes some time.
Not to mention the paid labor that goes into
bones.
it, the bones, the fucking energy you're using.
Yeah. I mean, cooks don't get paid a lot, so it's not that expensive, but yeah. That's awesome. That's an awesome story.
I'll have to get Nick on one time, and I wonder if I'd like to hear his account of that.
This isn't mine, but I was working at a place in Nantucket once, and I was on externship from culinary school, and my buddy who was working at this restaurant, we were both like had externs at this one restaurant, but we had picked up another gig at another restaurant across the way, and this was like a higher end restaurant, and we were very nervous, and there was only like a 3-person team, and he winds up taking the stock, and he was like straining the stock, and strains it into the sink without a thing underneath it.
Oh no! He just kept the bones.
And I think he realized, and I'm not going to name names on this one. I think he realized, and like so got some of it, but like chef was very confused on the quantity that we had of stock. That was a great one.
I love that.
I'll dive into my idiot sandwich, and I'm gonna fake some names here, but I was working at this restaurant Ciro's in upstate New York. This is during my time at culinary school, so I am probably 19 years old at the time, potentially 18. I started school when I was, I think, 17. So, and then I'd take the summer off and go up to Ciro's and work. And I was lucky enough to my buddy who his dad owned the restaurant. We went to school together. He gets a crew of us up there, and we're having a good time. And we got this kid Jamie, and Jamie had been a dishwasher, showed a lot of initiative, and ends up on the garde-manger line. For those who don't know, garde-manger is salads, basically cold appetizers. Stuff. There is definitely, I mean, we'll probably speak a lot to this on this pod, but there is a lot of hazing that happens in restaurants, right? It's very common to get a dishwasher or a young line cook with some pretty tough hazing, and this time we had this pastry chef. She was working with some chocolate cake. She had some extra just whatever sitting around, right? It's like scraps of a cake. And we also had an espresso machine in this kitchen. So we take a plate, we take probably 4 rounds cut out with a circle cutter, and we had cut out some chocolate cake pieces, a couple of them. And we also took maybe 3 or 4 espresso cakes fresh out of and we take the whole plate. Excellent. We hammer some powdered sugar all over that, and I walk up to Jamie and I'm eating one of the chocolate cake pieces. I'm like, dude, you got to try this. Like, this is some of the best chocolate cake I've ever had. And dude, he takes this espresso cake in his hand and he fucking munches half this thing, dude. And I'm just like, I'm waiting for the payoff, right? It's just espresso that had been
espresso grounds
2 hours ago, probably. And I'm just waiting for the payoff. I'm like, he's just chewing it. He's like looking like pleasantly, like pretty happy, and like, did he get? I'm like, I'm sure that was the espresso cake, and he keeps eating. He eats the whole thing. He's like, oh, that was good, and I was like, what is going on? Or like, I have no idea what's going on right now. Eventually someone like, dude, you just ate that espresso cake. What are you doing, dude? I don't think it was me. I think one of the other cooks was like, come on. And I mean, to his credit, he was just trying to be polite and didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And he was like, yeah, I did think it was a little grit.
I thought it was a little dry.
I thought it was a little gritty, but I thought it was it was okay. So Jamie, the dishwasher turned salad cook, winds up getting the idiot sandwich this week for me.
I love it. We at PJ's, I toasted some marshmallows just on the tops, and then I quickly basted them in butter to give them a glossy look, and I plated them on our scallop set, and I gave it to one of the bussers. It's like, oh man, I made an extra scallop on accident. And he's like, oh, let me get that.
As they always will.
Scoops in a fucking marshmallow. He's like, it's good.
Yeah, like a beurre blanc on there or something.
Yeah, it was just like a butter. No, just like a pasted with butter or whatever, just to make it shiny.
That's so good.
He ate it up. He was like, I thought they were a little slimy. Dude, it's a marshmallow.
Dude, there's so many, So many chef coats got ruined as we like sprayed fish sauce on the back of a line cook on the line. And I mean, if you haven't worked in a kitchen and you don't have fish sauce in your pantry like Ronnie and I have, the smell of fish sauce, if you're not ready for it, can be very, very like gnarly. It's fermented like fish.
It's
right?
fermented fish.
Yeah, so it's some stank shit for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, me 19, 20 years old I got it done to me a million times, but I'd walk up to people with a bottle of fish sauce and just hose their back of their chef coat. Like they wouldn't notice for a couple minutes. They'd notice eventually for sure. Yeah, man. I mean, the hazing is real. It's part of it that brings us all together, you know? And as much as it sucks sometimes going through that, when you're having beers with these people afterwards and laughing about it, that's some of the best shit, man.
Yeah, man.
100%.
Builds a lot of character. I think that's all we got, huh?
Yeah, that's the episode this week, y'all.
You know, like I said, this is first episode. It's only going to get better from here. Like we kind of explained a lot of who we are and what we're about and what this podcast is about, and it's only going to get better. And there's only going to be more fun stories to be had now that we've gotten past this first one. So join us, like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, all that fun stuff, and yeah, we love you.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Thanks for listening. I'm really stoked to be doing this with you, Ronnie, and we're gonna have a lot of fun reliving some of the horrors of the restaurant life.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right,
Peace.
later, y'all.